Hello and welcome to episode 26. I don't know why I always hold my hands up. Hello and welcome to episode 26 of the Storymode podcast. My name's Greg, and I'll be your host today. I'm being weirdly formal. I'm just going to really quick do introductions on my co-hosts. So we got Lewis and Eggman. How you guys doing today?
Awesome.
Doing good.
Please say hi individually. I don't know. I should have gone with one name and then the other name, because then you guys would actually have something to bounce off from there. Instead, I was an asshole. So let's just rewind. Lewis, how are you doing today?
You know I'm bad at this.
I mean, I gotta throw you under the bus at least once a show.
Yeah.
So seriously,
Well then, hi. I'm Lewis, also known as LRFLEW, as you could see below my head.
And Thyeggman down beneath us. How you doing today, dude?
Hi, I'm doing pretty good. Hi. I don't have anything special to say today. I finished a D&D campaign for the very first time yesterday. It was really cool.
First time
We're not
ever?
here to talk about that.
Oh.
Finished a whole campaign. It was 2 years long.
Yeah, I guess that. Touche. I mean, I've done a lot. Most of the D&D I ever did was one shots. So, but anyways, we're not here to talk about D&D or how we're doing today. We're here to talk about Subsurface Circular. So, if you've never seen the show before, this is a spoiler cast. We're going to be spoiling literally everything that we experience in this game. It's a short 2-hour game, so if you haven't played the game and you are sensitive to spoilers, I do very much recommend that you take the time to purchase the game. It's only like $5. Play through it, and then listen to the VOD, because this will be available on various platforms for your viewing pleasure
Or listening pleasure.
or listening pleasure. That works too. Yeah, so regardless, welcome to Story Mode, and thanks for joining us. So this is a video game, I think.
Very descriptive.
I really wish that every single RPG I ever played had this dialogue tree system, because that's what this game is. It's a dialogue tree with plot that you play through from end to end, basically.
It's more like a dialogue braid, but
Braid?
having only played one through it, it seems like they all kind of converge back to the same points, but you get different results from them.
Yeah.
So you don't for example, get off the Subsurface Circular, which is the train that the whole game takes place on. You don't get off if you make a certain choice and hop onto a different train.
Yeah, I'm just gonna real quick give the premise of this game. So the Subsurface Circular is what seems to be an underground subway system for techs. Now, techs are artificially intelligent robots that were created by people to basically do the hard jobs, but they have sentience, at least to an extent.
Some
more
more than others.
Yeah, some more than others. Some are smarter than others. I guess they have a pre-programmed intelligence level. So some of them are smarter, some of them are dumber. And
It's worth pointing out that you'd mentioned, but the subsurface is the name of the subway system. The circular is the certain track that you're on. So
Yes.
sort of like how the New York subway has all the different lines. One of them is the circular, and then there's other ones like the outer and all the other stuff. And
Yeah.
so you're on the circular, the one that goes in a loop.
So I don't know what you guys chose to name your tech, but in my case it was Theta. What did you guys pick? Because
I did Theta the first time. I tried Claire the second.
What did you choose, Eggman?
I also chose Theta.
Okay, so we'll just go with Theta.
I kind of cued in because the first character that you meet is Alpha 7. I was like, well, I could be James, Claire, Cabbage, or Theta. And
I thought the other option was Beta, so it was James, Claire, Beta, or Theta.
I thought there was something that you had to choose that was like Cabbage.
What? Okay. Well,
No, there was a choice that I can't remember what it was, but that person who recommended the word cabbage was specifically in the credits as the person who recommended the word cabbage.
Interesting. Well,
So
I don't know. Anyways,
Anyway.
So we'll go with Theta. You are a detective. That is your role as a tech, and you are underground and what was it? A maintenance tech comes on fabricator. Yeah, comes onto the train and basically starts complimenting you on your intelligence, and then states that their friend is missing. And you basically you don't really have any option. You take on the case, even though management is supposed to issue you cases. You take on the case anyway, and then you solve this case over the span of like 10 train stops or so, as techs get on and off and you talk with the people on the train, and you poke around and you ask questions, and they give you specific focus points, which are essentially just specific questions that you can ask certain techs in different situations to sort of unravel the kind of dark tech noir mystery that's going on in this world. And I think it's really interesting considering how much world building it actually has for just essentially sitting on a train as a robot talking to other robots on a train.
Yeah, there you can kind of infer a lot based on your conversations with people, or not with people, with the robots.
Are they not people?
But I mean, that's
let's not get into that.
But the thing is, they have a lot of the same characteristics that human characters would, right? They have lives beyond what you just see on the train.
Yeah.
Another point that we didn't mention yet is that your mandate locks you to this train, so you cannot leave the train, even if you wanted to, or you can't. The texts in this game also follow Asimov's second law that a robot cannot disobey a human, which is mentioned much later on. But so if you wanted to, or no, you can't harm a human, right?
Intentionally, unless they are ordered to by another human.
I can't remember what the full 3 laws are, but
it's something like you can't harm a human, you can't let a human come to harm through inaction, and you can't like actively hurt yourself or something like that. I think those are the 3 laws. It's been a while since
like we have this powerful tool right at our fingertips called Google, and there's absolutely no way for us to use it. It's just strange.
It's impossible.
Google it.
But anyways, so they follow all these rules, and like you can tell in the first train, and for the first scene where you're talking to Alpha 7, that's the only person in the train, so it's very simple. It's a back and forth. I kind of tried to explore with some of the different options, like some of them will allow you to lie, but it doesn't appear to make a lot of difference, at least in this train car. And I only did 1 full playthrough, but I found that it didn't seem like there was a lot of branching options from the different choices. Like you could basically choose to not explore some of your focus points, which is like the investigative things that pop up on the bottom of your screen that you have to ask the text about. But that's about it seemed to me.
Yeah. So real quick, I want to rewind and let's do a little bit of history. So Subsurface Circular was made by a guy named Mike Bithell, part of Bithell Games. He, as far as I know, was mostly a solo dev on his first game, which is Thomas Was Alone, which did surprisingly well. It was a cute little platformer where you play as a pixel that is gaining sentience.
Well, you play as to be fair, you play as a rectangle, not as a.
You're a pixel. You're a pixel. Anyway, okay, well, a rectangle. Because as I heard him quote on a different podcast once, I'm bad at art, which I thought was funny. He then later put out a second game called Volume, which was, I don't know how successful it was, at least on Steam. But it was a kind of a stealth action thing. Both of his games got announced and had proper PR cycles. This one just kind of came out of nowhere. Like it just popped up.
It was developed in 4 months. They literally said, okay, we have some time while we figure out the details for our next game. Let's just make something. And so 4 months later, it's like, oh, by the way, we had this.
Which is really interesting, and I kind of love it when developers do stuff like this. So, like, you need to make, like, the kind of scale of this game very clear when it's essentially just a 3D visual novel, for all intents and purposes. But I think it's a really neat thing, and it's also done something which I thought was really cool. We've covered a lot of short story-based games on this show now, like a number that are like under 2 hours and for sale on Steam. This one straight up has a note on the like main menu of the game that says YouTubers and streamers, and you click that button and it's just like a letter from Mike, and it just says like, thank you for wanting to share this game with your community. Please don't stream past Act 3. Or show past Act 3, because then people would be less inclined to purchase it, which I thought was really interesting. And then they state, if you do decide to make an episode of spoilers, put spoilers in the title. So, I don't know. I thought that was neat, and I think that more small games around the size should do that. Because as somebody who, like, I streamed What Remains of Edith Finch, for example. So, I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, these are easily games that can be very I would say the Edith Finch because of the depth of it. Like, it's a game that won awards. It's a very, very good game.
Yeah.
Because of the depth of it, even if you watched a playthrough of it, I think you would still get something out of playing it. I don't think it's as true for this one because it's a very
It's
short
a text story.
It's text. So what else are you going to get? You may have made different choices, which doesn't appear to do a ton to the outcome of things, except for at the
On
end.
a high level, I don't think the choices do anything. On a low level, it does because of branching dialogue options. So pretty much every single option that you can make will change the next line. There's a few cases I noticed where it didn't, but pretty much always at least the immediate following line is different.
Yeah.
Sometimes it will then immediately jump straight back to what the other line said, but usually there's at least one line of difference.
Is it possible to not get reset at that halfway point?
No, I don't
Okay.
think so.
I was wondering about that because like I lied a bunch, so they were like, "You're lying. There's discrepancies." I was like, "Well, okay."
I don't.
So I want to comment on the text too. I don't like the way that the text was displayed on the screen because they have options in there like scrolling speed and reading speed, which are good, but it doesn't actually help you read the text because as the text comes up and it's like you would see in a like a text message app where it appears at the bottom and it shoves the next one up.
Yep.
But because you're trying to read through them from top to bottom, it's like you're reading one, and if the next one pops up before you've finished, it just breaks your concentration and moves the next one. I think that was a really, really bad way to display the text in the game. And since that's almost the whole game, it's bad.
There was a few times
to,
where I had to scroll up because I'd get behind, but I see where you're coming from, but at the same time, I like it a lot more than that. I have to press enter literally every time I want to move the text forward.
Oh, no.
Like,
I love that way more because you know exactly where the next text is going to appear and you can move your eyes to there. But if you don't know how big...
keyboard.
You know, my
okay,
only...
hang on a second.
No, let him finish. It's fine.
If you know where the next text is going to appear, you can train your eyes to look there. But if you don't know how long the next text is going to be, which you don't in this game because they're different lengths, you're kind of hopping up and trying to figure out, your eyes are trying to guess where the text is, and then you're trying to find the place in the middle of the line that you were at. I really didn't like it.
That's
I don't
fair.
think that it breaks the game in a way that makes it unplayable or that it's a bad experience. It might be for some people, but I just think it was a really bad way to display the text.
The way the text appears, like, I'm probably somewhere halfway in between, your two opinions. Like, I kind of like it, but I see a lot of the issues with it. And the biggest one I've noticed is the timing. Now, I tried to actually kind of visually measure this, but I found it kind of hit and miss. What I think I discovered was that the amount of time it takes for the next bubble to appear is somewhat dependent on the size of the previous bubble, but is more dependent on the size of the bubble that's about to appear. So if someone says a short line of dialogue and then a long line of dialogue, you'll be waiting for that new dialogue to appear. And if they have a big line of dialogue, then a short line of dialogue, it will interrupt you. Whereas if they change the timing so that it's more dependent on the previous text bubble size, the flow would have worked a lot better.
That was also a complaint that I had. I think that exactly like you said, it should have been based on the previous line that just appeared and not on the line that is appearing, which you don't know how long it's going to be. You can guess because you have to wait longer for those. But
now I just want to start off my point here talking about the text dialogue bubbles. I completely agree with you guys. I think that there's times when they move suddenly, but there are moments in the game where it actually makes it kind of dramatic. Like the first time you reset another tech, there is a point in the game where something happens, and I think we'll run through all of that later, but something happens and you have to reset another tech's programming essentially to get underneath to their lower level intelligence to be able to speak with them properly when they're, for all intents and purposes, not working properly. There's several moments like that where you reset techs because you get basically like their override codes, which you're not supposed to be doing as well, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And the first time you do that, it goes like resetting, like it speeds up the text like crazy, and it goes like resetting text, and then it gives you like basically a percent bar. So I think that while the text system has its faults, like there's times where it'll move too fast or it'll bump you forward or like you can't keep up with it or whatever. But I think that they're able to have almost dramatic moments because of how the text setup is, if that makes sense.
I mean, I certainly agree with that. I wasn't saying I dislike the
Yeah.
system, just that I think
That's just my
that it
thoughts.
had one big pacing issue.
It has faults definitely, but I think it's really interesting gameplay wise, if that makes sense. In a game where all you're doing is clicking the next dialogue option.
I also agree that it does add that element of drama, but at the same time, those aren't lines that you're like trying to read for context.
No.
It's just
numbers.
and so that's fine. It's just when you're trying to read for context, they could have made a decision to make every text box the same size, no matter if it had 1 line or 4 or 5 lines in it, and that would have fixed a lot of my problems with the system.
Yeah,
but
maybe just more accessibility options for the text. I don't know.
Yep, that would be a good. There weren't any accessibility options now that I think of it.
I mean, I find it's interesting because I think we have basically done 2 text adventures for the podcast back to back. The last episode was on Doki Doki Literature Club, which, if we want to talk about those text systems, those are very different because Doki Doki used a much more traditional visual novel style where they have a little message box at the bottom. All the messages appear there. And if you want to see past messages, you have to go into the menu and find the history option, which removes a lot of the context compared to this system where it's based more like a messaging app. We have those slight issues with the timings and stuff because of that, but you also get a much easier access to the message history, and you can follow along much more cleanly if you need to back up and see what happened.
Yeah, and there's times when there's relatively large information dumps, and I found them, if nothing else, at least easy to keep up with. I think there was, out of 2 hours of play, because that's about how long the game was for me, it was about an hour and 55 minutes, and then I went back and replayed several cycles, I think is what they're called, chapters or whatever you want to call them. I went back and replayed some of them. I think there was only maybe 1 or 2 instances of, I need to scroll back here, but anyway, I don't know.
I think a little bit of it too was just
I read slowly.
Once you like zone in on what your reading speed is, what the reading speed is that is most comfortable for you in the settings, that helps too. So anyways, we should talk about the story though.
Yeah, we should. That's why we're here, right?
Yeah, so I can give a quick summary. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail, but basically the game is divided into 7 sections, and it'll pause, and then in between each section, and sections occur on like stations. So that's when a bunch of people get on or off, and you have to basically collect facts from these people to complete the objectives that are in your UI. And once you complete those objectives, it'll automatically just arrive at the next station, and then more people will get on and off, and you'll have a next set, and you're trying to uncover the mystery of why techs are disappearing, and then eventually, who's this guy called the red tech? Are the humans doing something that could harm the techs?
Is management involved? Are they trying to obliterate us, etc.? Yeah.
So it's kind of a pretty interesting story. What were your guys' thoughts? Like after, I think about 3 cycles, you kind of know all the different players in the game. What were your thoughts? Like what were your kind of hypotheses when
like story-wise, or just general thoughts?
Hypotheses as to like why were techs disappearing, what were these strange occurrences, if the red tech was important or who he is, and I'm talking about specifically in the middle of the game.
Well, I was really happy when I started playing this game because I talk about this a lot. I listen to the Giant Bombcast. They're video game journalists essentially, and they talk about games. And this game was mentioned in passing by Brad Shoemaker, who's been in the industry for years, a handful of times during their Game of the Year discussions, where he just basically said like, yo, this is a really surprising, cool thing that everybody should play, and I can't say anything about it. It's like 2 hours long. Just play it. That's basically all he ever said about it. And so I literally had no idea what this game was about. I just knew it was good, and the writing was good, and I wanted to play it. So going in completely blind, I encountered, like, by the time I hit the 3rd cycle, my general thoughts as to what was going on was, it's probably involving the humans. There's probably some sort of criminal element with humanity going on, but I had a feeling they were going to twist it around, just saying, it's like a fault in their programming or something. Like, at that one point where they say, the reason techs are disappearing is because of a numerical error, and they're actually producing less than they thought they were. which I thought was a really interesting kind of way to take it for a bit. Yeah, I don't know. For me, I was expecting humanity to be involved in some way because we hadn't seen any. So it's kind of interesting hearing them talk about people like they're a different thing. So,
Lewis, what were
I
your
think it's the suspicious
hypotheses
events
as you
tag.
worked your way through the game?
I'm not sure I really was coming up with a lot by the kind of, particularly that third section.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I was just confused a little bit about how the world was going.
It's not super clear
One of the
early
things
on.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that happens in the UI is that, you mentioned that there's these goals that appear.
Yeah.
And so at the start of each section, there's generally one goal that once you achieve that goal, that act ends. And so there's like the first act, it's like figure out what the tech wants in the second act, all at once. But the second act, like your goal, like at the start you get is basically rule out the red tech. And then the third act, your goal is to rule out the human element. And I think just seeing that even before you start actually asking people kind of took me out of it and confused me.
Well,
I think that those were provided not only as like objectives, but also as clues. Like you kind of look at that and you think, well, there's got to be something deeper going on here. People don't just disappear, or rather, texts don't just disappear for no reason. So I was kind of suspicious of like management. Like they were talked about as this like higher order government or something, and we didn't really learn a ton about them. Even at the end, we didn't learn a ton about them, other than that they were basically the government entity. So yeah, that's
gonna play real well on audio. Anyways, go on.
Yeah, so I was suspicious of the humans. I was suspicious that humans were somehow not humans in general, but management specifically was causing these disappearances. And it also seemed, as you worked your way through, that there is this kind of latent animosity among humans at large towards techs because they're taking away their jobs, basically.
Yes. I mean, it's kind of a expanded upon version of like when you're talking about like the human disliking of text. It's kind of like a more like take a little bit of racism themes and then take the way we feel about self-checkouts taking away people's jobs and put those two together, and then that's what this game kind of gives you, if that makes sense.
I don't know if I have the same feeling of you as self-checkouts. Do you dislike self-checkouts, Blind?
Self-checkouts have legit made people lose jobs at the fast food in the fast food industry, at least.
I mean, I understand. It's when
100%
I go to a grocery store,
lost
though,
jobs already.
if I have a small amount, if I don't have a large amount of food, I will 100% use the self-checkout because I just don't want to have to talk to people.
I mean, I don't know if self-checkouts are the same in like grocery stores, but at least in fast food places, 100% people have lost jobs. Anyways.
Yeah, and it does suck that people are losing jobs, but like the kind of altruistic idea that you have when you understand self-checkouts is that like people can be taken away from these menial jobs to like go do something that is more worthwhile and better for society, right?
There's only so many jobs that are better for society, and that's
like
the whole
exactly.
thing about this game.
I don't want to get into politics, but
welcome to Subsurface Circular.
There's a section in the game where you're talking to, I think it was, now I remember, you're talking to the tech who was working as the nanny for a politician, but then got fired because apparently having a tech act as a nanny for you is a big like no in the political scene, and so he got fired. And you're talking to the nanny bot about all this, and they mention that like the humans seem kind of discontent about techs taking jobs that are formerly predominantly human, and you get a set of options, and they're all ones that have huge parallels to the modern world. There's the one like, we're doing the jobs they don't want us to do. There's one that's like, we're helping the economy. It's like, these are all things that you hear today about technology or illegal immigrants. And
you also mentioned the child childcare tech, which was row 67. They'll have like a Greek letter assigned with a number.
Who you help get a new job. You put her on or at least in my case, I put her on a path to go become a psychiatrist.
But did you guys I found myself doing this, and I was like, oh man, this is getting me to think of some really deep stuff. I assigned a female role, a female persona to her, even though the texts are genderless. I'm like,
Mm.
oh, I just assigned a gender role to a childcare provider.
I was going to bring that up because I had kind of the reverse when I first saw it based on the robot design. I was kind of mentally giving it a male voice, but then the dialogue is clearly written in more of a kind of older woman style. It was like pretty
Calling you
clear
dear
doing
and
it.
stuff.
Yeah,
It's talking to me like my grandmother, basically.
yeah, and that disconnect kind of made me hop out and say, like, what am I doing? Am I, these are clearly genderless. Why am I assigning these roles?
Can I just say that
And
the
then I
writing
went
in
and I
this
continued to do that.
the writing in this game is extremely good. Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say extremely good. It's quality though. It's above average.
it's a lot better than a lot of games we've played.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's easy to
And
say.
In my opinion, one of the neater things that you can do with video games is like take an interesting theme that's fanciful or interesting or different or cool or fun to look at and make you think about us right now while being in a completely different universe. And this game pulls that off in spades. It's really cool. I really like it. But
Yeah, and maybe it was that when they were writing Row 67 for childcare, they were just like, we want this to have the voice that sounds like somebody like this. And so people will ask questions like we just did, where we're like, is this supposed to be a female persona, or am I doing something that was never intended by the creator?
yeah. I mean, the way I was envisioning all of their voices were I don't know how much you guys know about Nier Automata, but the robots in the background just kind of have this really high pitched kind of sound at all times. They actually
like,
they are actual voices, but I
I'm
imagine
like
them.
an hour into Nier.
I imagined all of the robot voices as like different versions of Microsoft Sam with auto tuning. Like that's how I read out all of the dialogue in that game in my brain. It's just various like auto tuned versions of Microsoft Sam. So
What did
Okay,
you
then.
guys think about specifically, Blind, you had already mentioned this briefly, but in the 5th segment, when you're talking to the detectives,
yeah.
you can lie to them.
Hmm.
But lying, we can get into the other puzzles in a second, but lying in the game doesn't really seem to have much effect. And it's kind of weird because some robots, some techs seem to know immediately when you're lying to them, but other ones just kind of accept it. And that seems kind of strange because I don't feel like robots should be able to lie to each other, but I guess that's not one of Asimov's laws. So
I mean, it's interesting because you have to lie at one point. You impersonate a priest.
I tried not to select any of the actual lying options, and they do sort of kind of get around that. I think eventually you'll just be your character can say, "Well, I can act as a priest if you want," sort of thing.
Oh, interesting.
They kind of get around that. It's weird.
yeah,
Even though there's a
I just
priest
lied to
like
him.
in the same train. I lied once and then I kind of regretted it. I can't remember what my first lie was, but when I got to okay. So essentially, you're not supposed to take this case. We should probably rewind for anybody who isn't playing. You're not supposed to take the case that you're taking, which is the disappearances. Early on, it immediately says it's like go against the prime directive. I think is what it actually says, which is only take on cases that management sends you. But because you're just sitting on this train, you're talking to another tech. Also, when you're talking to techs, you're not actually just publicly having a conversation. Like their brains link up and then they just communicate, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
So
did you ever go through the developer commentary for the game?
I want to. I haven't done that yet though.
Because I did, and how it works is actually not very great. It's basically they add another tech on the train at all times, and you can ask it a set list of questions.
Okay.
Or you can use one of the focus points to ask it one of the other questions. So it's weird. But
I only went I clicked on it and did like the first mission and kind of went through all the options that not all the options, but like the options that interested me, and I was just like, this I don't really like this, and I just kind of I don't know. there was a lot there, and I'm just like, I don't know if I care that much about the background of this game. I just kind of had an enjoyable experience, and I don't want to color it with all the, or bog it down with all this like knowledge, and then I'm thinking about what thought process. I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't delve too deep into it, basically.
I don't know. I looked through all of it, and there was some interesting stuff in there, like how they talked about the wipe that happened, the erase that happens in chapter 5, that section 5, was because they needed a way to clean up some of those old focus points so that they could limit how much the scope of the dialogue was, because it was ballooning out of control by that point.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the problems that I had with the game, is because you're wiped, and a wipe to me says that you don't have a job anymore, you don't remember anything. But it just seemed to remove all of your focus points, and you're still a detective, and it didn't really seem to affect much.
I don't think it actually wipes your memory or your personality or anything. It just it's like stripping somebody of their rank or their job, I think. So essentially, when you get sent back to it's fabrication that you have to go to get assigned a new job. So I think what happens when they get reset, it's not that it's not we are erasing everything in your robot brain and giving you a new robot brain. It's we are firing you, and you are going to go to this place to get a new job.
You basically lose all of your save data, but you can start the game again.
Yeah. So that's what it is, I think.
Yeah.
So.
At one point in the game, I thought that the listeners were behind everything for some reason, because I got really frustrated. I mean, they're involved, but they're not like the masterminds, basically.
I kind of love the listeners. So basically, like, number one, the music in this game is great synthwave. I don't know who did the music, but it's fantastic. It's very like Blade Runner-y mood stuff. Maybe not as atmospheric as Blade Runner, but good synthwave all the same. And there's on almost it's like every other or so, almost all of the instances where you're talking with people, there will be one tech with the role listener, and they literally just have like false headphones on their head, and they'll either be listening to like hip hop or some form of like dub trance or something, and you can like hear their music echoing around the train because the audio design is fantastic. And when you talk to them, it blows up the audio, and all you can hear is their audio, and you can just like send them dialogue options, and they just don't respond. It's quite funny.
Yeah, I loved it just because I got to listen to the music, which was quite good. It was a little bit frustrating when they kept appearing and kept not answering your questions. They would not respond at all to you. You could click options.
There's a few dialogue spots though where you can make fun of them talking to other techs though. So like you're talking to another tech, it's like, seen any interesting characters on the subsurface today or on the circular today? And then one of the options is some more useful than others. There's just like a listener right next to you. It's great.
I love some of the dialogue options. So yeah, if you try to talk to the listener, they'll never respond, but there's some really funny things you can say to them, and you can basically have entire one-sided conversations. There'll be an option like, what do you think about the weather today? And they'll just dot, and you're like, yeah, that's what I was thinking. It was pretty accurate today. Oh, I'm sorry to hear. It's like, did you get rusted out there? You could just basically make up whole conversations with them. It's pretty silly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I like it. So, I think
should we talk about the couple of puzzles that are in the game?
The dialogue puzzles, the gameplay, if you will.
The gameplay.
Yeah.
So there's a puzzle in, I think it's my cat's sitting on my notebook right now, so I can't turn the pages.
Oh,
but...
big problems. Big life, big problems.
But I think it's in 4 where you meet this one tech who's just speaking in gibberish. But if you're clever, you can figure out that each letter is just shifted one forwards. So as you speak to it, you say hello, and it's just like blah blah blah, and you're like, well, if it's saying hello to me, this is what it would be. And then you're like, oh, the H is an I, and the E is an F, and the L is an M. So it's like, you can figure out everything. And I was hoping that there would be an achievement for doing all those without without using because they actually have an auto helping thing that'll
Yeah, they
let you
have a
do
hint
it.
system.
It does.
Basically,
It doesn't
select their dialogue option, and every single message that the person responds, they will add a little sub message giving you a hint.
It's like guided directive or something. There is actually a hint
Yeah.
button as well, and it's kind of separate. So, but I'll spoil that puzzle. But basically, what you're trying to do in that puzzle is there's two texts, right? One of them is the lover, and then the other one is like the lover's partner, basically. And so the lover can reset the robot's partner, so that their speech works, but you basically have to like decipher the garbled up bot's like reset password, which is cat, and it's DCU, I think, is what the garbled up version was. And so I translated the entire thing, and then it's just like the important letters give to my friend DCU. And I didn't translate the DCU, and I couldn't make it work because I just kept punching in DCU. And then I looked at it, and I was like, God, I'm an idiot. Like, I was stuck on that for like maybe 10 minutes. I was like, because when you're talking to the lover, who really isn't useful at all, they're just saying, oh, I'm so happy to be with my beloved, essentially. They're not useful at all. And they're saying, oh, are they glitching again? Like, can I can fix them if you give me the words or the letters. And they just give you like a bunch of options for letters. I'm like, why isn't you on this list? And I was like, I legit had I'm gonna swear out loud for a second there and finish this because.
So if you're like me and can't actually figure out the puzzle at all, because I really struggled with that one, what you do is you turn on that deciphering mode, that help thing.
Yeah.
And then if you click on any of the focus points, you'll ask, say a word to them, and they'll respond with the word, but everything, of course, shifted up. And of course, the hint will be like, oh, it appears that every character is one greater than the one that was intended. And so it kind of tells you the answer, which is convenient at least.
Yeah, well, I mean, what I did was I just kind of grabbed my phone and just plunked out the dialogue options because I couldn't just look at it and think it out in my brain. I guess I'm not that smart, so it was a nice puzzle though. I quite enjoyed that one a lot.
I found a shift converter online, and so I typed in the message that appeared on the screen, and I said, shift everything by one character, decode. Oh, there it is.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah, I just did it like in my brain. After I figured out one word, I was like, oh, this first word is hello. Everything shifted 4 by 1. I can just figure it out. But
well, we found the smart person in the group.
Long because I don't know my reverse alphabet.
I thought that was like a really cool puzzle. And
I really liked it too. I mean, it required me to like basically grab the equivalent of a modern day pen and paper, my phone. So like any puzzle that requires me to go outside of the game to solve it is a good puzzle in my opinion.
Yeah.
Also,
one of the puzzles actually caused me to go out and get pen and paper, and I ended up writing down a solution for that one, but I guess we'll come to that in a minute.
And so I really like this puzzle because for me at least, it gave me the feeling that I got in Portal when you're like, this is the stupidest freaking puzzle I've ever done.
Who designed this? What is this, man?
And then you're like, you put one portal somewhere that you haven't done before, and you're just like, I'm an idiot, but this is great. Now I figured it out. I'm a genius.
Those are the best kinds of. That's a well-designed puzzle. Are the puzzles that look impossible and then you solve it and you feel like a moron, or you feel really smart because you solved it quickly.
So what did you guys think about the other puzzle? I think this one was even better than the translation puzzle.
So are we talking about the detectives real quick, or?
I guess, we should talk about the detectives because that happened first.
Yes. Well, I was going to say real quick, even before that, there's 2 instances of basically a puzzle where you have to have a dialogue tree with another tech, and they'll have like 3 things in a specific order, and you need to turn back around and talk to another tech and repeat those same 3 things. There's one very late in the game, I think in chapter 6, where you have to basically get another tech to confess something to you. So you have to go to the Pope or the priest tech and try to do a confession, and you figure out what questions he's asking you, and then you go to the other tech and you have to give those same questions. And there's another form of that earlier, which I think is actually more just kind of the cat one that we mentioned before. But that one was kind of a smaller puzzle, but one worth still mentioning. Because I mean, I never found that one too difficult.
I think
it was just
to an extent, every single chapter, is that what we're calling them? Every single episode, to an extent, is a dialogue puzzle, because you're trying to get to a goal. You have the focus points, which is I can ask these guys specific question, and I guess you're trying to you're trying to get through the dialogue as I would say as quickly as possible, while finding out as much information as possible. So to an extent, every single one is a puzzle. Some of the chapters are more information dumps than others, but yeah, I don't know how else
I guess I made a distinction between like the dialogue puzzles and the logic puzzles, because these actually involve some deduction. So that's why I consider them puzzles versus the dialogue trees, which after going through enough options, you'll eventually just get everything to happen. So, and you have to switch between people, but it should be pretty obvious that you need to switch between people when there's no more options on the person that you're talking to.
Yeah, and usually you'll either get a focus point, or you'll realize, okay, this is what I need to ask this person now, or you'll, for example, be talking to one person, and actually one of the smaller earlier puzzles is with the nanny. Actually, when you're talking to the nanny bot, they ask you what station they need to get off at, which is interesting because you actually have a map of the whole circular, right? And you have to figure out what station you were just at, and then like count the number of stations up and coming to tell this person like where to get off, which is Flag Arch, if I remember correctly. To go to.
She asks you like basically, do you know how many stops it is until station, and then you eventually realize that she doesn't even want to go to that station anyways, because when she's trying to go, she needs to get to the surface anyways.
Yeah,
but
it's interesting though. Like it requires you to go into the world and just like kind of give somebody basic instructions within a world that you're not used to, which I think is neat. And in that, it forces you to explore the map a little bit, because technically there's a map, and then you can kind of follow along where you are, because every single time the chapter shifts over, it gives you the title of the station that you're at, which is neat. But anyways, dialogue puzzles.
Yeah. So the dialogue puzzle with the detective. So basically, you're found out, and when you report to management with your findings so far, they're like, we can't have you doing this. So they send some detectives, and they start questioning you, and you're still trying to figure out the mystery of why the texts are disappearing at this point. And so you use their presence to try to get more information out of them. And so as you're talking between these two people, you figure out that one of them is just like an emotional support detective for some reason, and the other one is the real detective. And the attitude of the emotional support detective determines what options are available for the other one. And so you have to get the emotional support one happy before
no, you have
the other one.
You have to get him investigative, because the emotional support one has 3 possible emotions, which are pissed off, happy, and investigative. If it's happy, then the detective bot basically responds with useless information saying, "Oh, isn't everything just goddamn peachy?" And then if you,
I think you have to go through multiple of them. Then
you have to go through all 3. In fact, actually, I remember the puzzle. You first need to get him angry. You ask him about the disappearances. He mentions that he knows there's exactly 16 disappearances a week. You use that, it gives you a focus point 16. Use that focus point 16 to get him inquisitive. You ask him about something else. I forget which option it was. I think it was it wasn't disappearances again, but it was something. I think you ask him about 16 or something, right? He gets kind of confused. You go back to happy, and then you get him to focus on something else, and that continues the story, because then he disconnects himself from the emotional robot, and you go through the last dialogue options for the section. At least as I remember it.
Yeah, I kind of lost track, and I didn't actually pick that. This was actually the hardest puzzle for me, strangely.
Yeah, I had a really hard time with this one too.
Because I was frustrated, because usually when you pick a focus point, you won't be able to ask the same robot again on that focus point. But the emotional support robot, all the options would stay lit all the time. And so you could always just go to any of them. And that's because you need to be able to switch in between different moods, but I didn't really pick up on that.
Yeah.
So I thought it was an okay puzzle.
Yeah.
I thought it was very interesting though that you got more information out of them depending on what mood they were. Like when the real detective robot,
The more advanced one.
yeah, when he is angry, he's like, "You're gonna be fired," basically.
Yeah.
When
He acts like
you're
your
gonna lose your
superior.
job.
I remember this one where it actually says, you talk about, you ask him about detectives when he's angry, and he says, I am a better detective than you ever were, and you go, were? It's like, you'll see.
Okay. I'll be right
Yeah.
back. I need to go blow my nose really badly.
Okay.
Just continue.
So basically, once you finish your conversation with them, or finish what was your objective in that train? I can't remember. It's just
the objective was something silly like prevent causing
avoid complications. That's what
that was it.
So I actually took that to heart, and for all the dialogue options when I was talking with them, I tried to give them as little information as possible. And it ended up that it didn't really matter all that much, but I guess it was a little bit of fun role playing before you kind of got to the part where with the dialogue puzzle where you're trying to get the moods to match or something.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty cool, even though it didn't make a ton of difference, which is a little bit disappointing. But anyways, then they reset you basically, and you get in the next car, you get a priest and an infantryman. And the infantryman wants to confess something, and so you lie to him that you're the priest, and he's like, what are the words? And so the priest asks you, so the priest is like, okay, I'll take your confession, or no, I will take your confession, but only if you can answer this puzzle. Basically, he's like, I don't really know what he's testing.
He says he wants to tell you a story, and he will quiz you to make sure you were listening. And then he gives you one of those puzzles, like this the famous one that apparently they claim Einstein made, which he probably didn't or whatever. But it's the one, it's basically that one where you have a number of different people and they have different attributes. Like the famous one, I think, is they each have a pet and they live a different color house and so on and so forth. And then they give you limited information. You have to deduce what everyone actually has to get the final answer.
Yeah, like,
but it's the same sort of one, but it's about four texts with names, colors, heights and occupations.
Yeah. And so, like, for example, one of the things that you have to figure out, and if you weren't paying close enough attention during the puzzle, well, it's not even mentioned in the puzzle. They'll ask you, who's the farmer? Farmer is not mentioned at all in the puzzle, but through deduction, you can figure out who 3 of the people are, and then you have to then deduce that, of course, the 4th one who doesn't have a profession is the farmer, right?
Yeah. I mean, I ended up actually grabbing out a piece of paper. This won't work well for the audio version, but you can see, at least on the video,
He's holding up a notepad. He is looking at the notepad.
I have all 4 names. I have the colors and the heights and the occupations, and I wrote them all down. And there's a little bit I had erased where I had to take a note because I couldn't fit it into the grid yet. But I basically figured out each of the attributes I could, and I deduced down, and I figured out who exactly everybody was, and I could just answer all the questions from there.
Which was
I did
kind of neat. I like that puzzle, even though it was hard.
Like I said, this is my favorite puzzle. I just find these sorts of logic puzzles very cool, and they give you basically just enough information to be like, what are we talking about again? And then you're like, okay, well, if this person's the tallest and this person's the shortest, and we know that these 2 people say, or like the soldier says that they were taller than most people, so they must be the 2nd tallest, and so it's very cool. And basically, once you answer that, he'll take your confession, and then because you know that, then you have to remember the set of questions that he asked you, and then go ask those to the soldier. So, and the soldier is the one who reveals kind of the main twist in the story, which is that
before we get there, can I just mention that I kind of liked the priest character because, as we mentioned, the creator of this game was the one who created Thomas Was Alone. And he kind of decided, in fact, he mentioned, if you go to the developer commentary and you ask about the priest, one of the things he'll talk about is like, he thought it was funny that he put, Thomas Was Alone volume and this game all in the same universe. And then he just says, oh my God, I made a trilogy.
That's funny.
But yeah, if you talk to the priest, he'll mention the architects, and then he'll mention that he is a Thomaist or whatever. and you ask him to read some of the scripture, and he'll read. I actually tried to go through the whole thing because there's an achievement for it, but he only goes up until about, I think, the end of the second part, because I think Thomas Was Alone has like 5 parts or so. It only goes about part way until the priest says, "I'm going to stop here because you definitely need to experience this with the music and the gameplay." What was it? Whittling puzzles, I think the word he used.
It puts a large portion of Thomas Was Alone's dialogue just straight into the game, because Thomas Was Alone is like a narrator, right? So it's literally just the narrator's dialogue, which is awesome. Which is also Mike Bithel's voice, by the way.
The narrator in Thomas Was Alone.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, it's him.
That's cool. I thought it was kind of cool because I am familiar with Thomas Was Alone and of like the basic mechanics of the game, but I didn't realize that Mike Bithell had written the game, and he's also the one who wrote this game. So.
He's the
I hadn't realized it was the same person until it literally started quoting the Thomas Was Alone, and I was like, "Oh,
hold on, what am I playing? Is this a sequel? Damn it!"
Yeah,
kind of. No, you don't need
to
play
trilogy.
Thomas Was Alone to play this.
I mean, you don't have to, but the priest sort of sets up this concept that the characters from Thomas Was Alone, which is a little bit of spoilers for Thomas Was Alone, the ending of that story where there's sort of a pseudo escape sequence ended up creating the AIs that eventually became the techs.
Yeah, it's kind of neat how they tie it all together, honestly. So, shall we talk about the twist with the military tech?
Yeah.
So military tech comes in, basically says, I've sinned, like, and so you talking with the priest, you eventually figure out how to either act as a priest or impersonate a priest so that the tech will talk to you. And you've been completely reset. You've been taken off of the case by management. Management's pissed at you, and you're just kind of saying, well, I need to solve this at this point, right? And then he says, well, number one, I know the red tech, who keeps getting mentioned throughout the entire story as the person involved or the mysterious one behind everything, right? He mentions
in fact, I don't even think anyone ever says that they know that the red tech is involved, just that he's a shady character that seems to have appeared around the time of the disappearances.
Yes. So they almost say it's like unavoidable. Now, this is spoilers. Once again, this is a spoilers show. Essentially, what is happening is this military tech working with the red tech, as well as some, I think, ex-people from management, so humans, are mass producing an army of techs, 8,000 techs, which they are building outside of the city on the upper level to invade and wipe out the majority of humanity to put the techs in charge, instead of having humans in charge of the techs, because the techs are smarter and more efficient and way better than the humans. And
yeah, basically their goal is to flip the structure. Instead of humans being the management and the techs doing the jobs, they want to flip it. The humans do the jobs and the techs run the city.
But it's interesting because the techs can't hurt humans of their own will, so it's a human that has started this entire event, essentially. So it's people that have built this army to go wipe out the majority of the other people, purely on the basis that they want to put the techs in charge so that the people can just kind of go and make art. Which is
I find it kind of interesting that he says that the goal is to, well, it's actually not him who says this, but we'll get to it in a moment. The idea is that text would be more objective and more efficient, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think the objectivity thing is really makes sense to me, because if the texts have free will and are aware, they have sentience, then I don't really understand how they can be objective. It sounds like they can have opinions and things like that.
This was a little bit vague, but towards the end of the sequence, you have literally 2 focus points: the status quo or change. And if you use some of those at a certain point, the red tech will say, basically this will mean that only the smartest one will remain. That they'll basically whittle down all the techs until the smartest one will be left. And so it kind of suggests the idea that instead of having the multiple techs with all the different intelligence levels and a certain amount of sentience, they would just have one big super intelligent tech, and they would basically remove any of the intelligence limiters on there, and it would just be kind of the smartest it could be, which would it adds a few more variables to that kind of free will idea there.
Which is very interesting. So then the military tech basically says, but regardless, you're going to meet Red himself, or the Red tech themselves, and this is their stop. And when you pull up to the next station, the military tech stands up and gets off the train, and then the fabrication tech from the beginning that said that they had missing friends gets on and says, "Hi, I'm Red." Yeah.
That was kind of the big twist of the game. It was the Red tech all along.
You know, it's a lot less exciting when you say it that way.
It was a twist, and I get it. And basically, the Red tech explains to you that it's not actually the techs who are organizing against the humans; it's the humans who are organizing the techs against the humans. So it's legal. It follows Asimov's laws and all that. So
and
it makes sense.
The reason the Red tech was using you to investigate this stuff is because your tech has a very high level of intelligence, because your tech is a detective. So you have near human level of sentience. And because Red tech is just a fabrication tech, he doesn't have that level of sentience. So essentially, he's been using the listener robots, which are the ones with headphones on that you can't talk to, theoretically. Or in lore, what they're doing is they're actually just tapping into your conversations with the other techs and relaying them back to Red, so Red can listen to you kind of figure out this entire story. Red knew that you would, as a player, pursue the mystery, and then at the end, Red basically says, "Okay, well, you have two options. And I need you to make this decision for me because you're the only one here who's smart enough to do that. One, shoot the Red tech, and then management finds out, the army gets obliterated, and everything goes on as normal. Or B..."
To clarify, the Red tech mentions that if you go above the surface, you'll connect with management, and everything everything that I've told you will be sent to management. And so it's basically saying that, yeah, if you walk out of here, management will know, and they will obliterate the...
And I should also mention, Red pulls out a gun, basically, and is holding it. And then Red says, "You take this gun and you shoot yourself, and we'll make a new world." Probably means the
and by
end
the
of
we
techs.
we mean me. I'm going to make a new world because I'm the only one who's alive.
Yes. So either you shoot the Red tech, and then you get credits, or you and it basically gives you like one more dialogue box and you get credits, or you shoot yourself, you get one more dialogue box and then credits. And there's different achievements involved with each one, and that's basically the end of the story.
Speaking of Asimov's laws, wouldn't one of them prevent that from happening? I mean,
you can hurt other techs.
But, I mean, one of the options was literally to violate the third law, so...
I mean, you've been lying already. Oh.
Yeah,
Maybe
so
it's because of your higher level of sentience. I don't know.
The third law says a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protections does not conflict with rules 1 and 2. So there's probably an argument that we could come up with that says that one of the robots killing the other conflicts with laws 1 or 2. So, well, I mean, if that's the case, you should always shoot Alpha, because 100% his plan is going to cause humans to die, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know why she couldn't, or that whatever, I'm not going to put a gender on it. I don't know why the detective couldn't just get off at the stop without shooting the gun. I mean, yes, management would find out, but also the other robot's still alive, and
the army's still there, and they're poised to march right now. Like, I didn't understand that either. I was like, and because you ask him, like, surely there must be another way, and he's like, nope. I looked, there was no way. Just trust me.
There's not like there's any doors on this train. Nope.
It's just like, oh my gosh, come on. That's kind of a cop-out. I was a little bit disappointed with that.
Yeah, I was not a fan of the ending, particularly since it has you make a choice that is supposed to have an impact, and then they just don't do anything about it.
I wonder if
The game ends as soon as you shoot one of
like
the techs.
when you shoot one of the texts and then you get credits. Okay, so I liked the ending. I thought it worked quite well. I think that a lot of that comes down to the amount of time it took them to make the game and the budget. I was hoping for a cutscene or something, like text marching, if nothing else.
Speaking of cutscenes, the cutscene at the very beginning was very good. It was just
Yes.
like pictures of the robots, but I loved it.
Yeah,
It was very cool.
Very
It
moody.
wasn't like pictures. It was just 3D. It was more like what do you call it?
Like a scene that you can kind of wiggle a mouse and move around a little bit.
Well, I was thinking there's a technical term, a diorama. It's like a diorama,
Yeah,
a 3D diorama.
yeah.
Because you could kind of move the camera around to adjust the angle, and also it's just continuously rotating around the objects.
I thought the pacing of the game was really good. Just in general, like each chapter was just long enough that I felt that every single tech that you encountered on your journey had enough character development that they were believable as beings. And then that ending sequence where the whole camera shifts, because like normally, because it is a 3D animated space, this isn't a static image that you're looking at. You can move the mouse around and you can kind of like change the point of view of the camera just a little bit as you're mousing around, which it gives a really neat 3D effect and gives the game a lot of atmosphere. But there's when you come into the end, you get a completely different camera angle. They like put the camera on the floor pointing up, and you can see like the light shooting past. The lighting is incredible. It looks really nice considering what the game is.
In that 7th act, like in all the acts, I think you can see these little kind of digital displays, and they do slowly change over time for different kind of advertisements and stuff. But in that last one, with the red text on there, they're all just glitching out. They're flashing, and so it creates, and all those screens add to the light of the scene, so you get all these kind of flashing little lights, and it creates this really kind of spooky atmosphere that works well for the scene.
Yeah, so unlike a lot of visual novels where it's just a lot of like, static images or lightly animated things, it's a fully animated 3D space that sort of changes as you go through the acts. But then when you come down
fully
to
animated in the sense that there's a lot of procedural animation. Actually, part of the director's commentary, they even mentioned that there's most of it's procedural. Like they had an animator figure out some of the poses and the walking animations, but the rest, so like how the head moves when he's trying to talk or when they look at each other and the shifting with the movement of the train, that's 100% procedural.
Yeah, it's really cool looking at the game visually. And then the reason I like the ending is because it comes really quick, and this is a split-second decision that you have to make now. And there's been a lot of character development for your character. Like you've been fired, you're not technically a detective anymore, management is pissed at you, you've gone down this road, finish it. And it's a really neat moment. And it would be really cool if there was like a hidden third way or some way where it all ends and everybody's happy. But I kind of like you blow up Red and tell your boss. You shoot this terrorist and you tell your boss, or nah, I like these guys. Let's destroy a large portion of humanity and build a different world. It's a little ham-fisted because it's like, here the game's over, you don't have an option really. You have to do A or B. But I think that because of the pressure of the situation that your character is in, it's believable to me in a way.
I find it interesting that you basically have to choose a side at 3 points in that end scene.
Yeah.
At one point to continue, you have to choose one of the two focus points, the status quo or change, which basically correlate to, shooting him or shooting yourself respectively. Yeah. So you have to do that one at one point to get the dialogue to continue. You then ask him some questions about the situation. You then get to choose who you point the gun at, whether him or you. And then there's a few more lines of dialogue. And then you finally select who you're actually going to shoot. So it gives you like 3 times to choose.
Yeah.
And only the last one matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is fair. It gives you time to think about it, I think. So you can still change your mind.
I think it would have been more dramatic. Well, I think there's pros and cons to both ways, but I'll describe the way that I think it would have been more dramatic if the sound effect when you click the button that says shoot him or shoot yourself, or point. If they hadn't had the point the gun at, if you just shoot him and shoot yourself, and you should, as soon as you click it, you hear the gunshot. But since they give you the choice to change your mind at the last second, it kind of defeats that, and it's not immediate. And I think the pacing, it's only like a couple seconds long, but the pacing of the point when you shoot could have been handled better. Like,
Yeah.
for example, if you point the gun at the red tech and then end up shooting yourself, you basically hold the gun out and you click shoot yourself, and then you immediately hold it to your head, wait like half a second, and then shoot yourself. And it should be pause here and then shoot yourself immediately.
Yeah. I think that end sequence could have had a little bit more polish on it. Also, I felt that the gun sound was a little underwhelming. It was just like it sounded like a firecracker. Like I want a Doom style kind of sound, but that's me. Everything else about the sounds were fantastic, but
yeah,
I don't know. I think that just I was specifically talking about just the two options. Side with management or side with red. By either siding with management, the guys that just fired you for pursuing a disappearances case, the guys that are pissed at you, or destroy humanity and, well, a lot of humanity, basically cause like a population destruction of humanity, which I think that it's a really neat perspective because we're people, So do we side with the people that are not really fucking with the robots, I guess, but not really messing with the robots, but do we side with the people that are running this kind of awful society of sentient robots that are doing essentially slave labor, or do we go against ourselves and put them in charge? I don't know. From the point of view as a person playing a robot who's being controlled by people that has the opportunity to destroy the people that are controlling them, it's just a really interesting train of thought.
One thing I thought was kind of weird about the ending is that very early on, you hear about a political party, the HMC. I forget exactly what it stands for off the top of my head, but it's basically a political party that seems to be entirely against techs. That they're basically just, they're taking all the jobs, and so they should.
Party. They're referred to as a terrorism group by one of the other techs at one point. And they're also referred to as marching down the streets with techs' heads on stakes. Admittedly, they were uncompleted, taken off of the assembly line, is what they state, but it's still a gruesome affair, and that's really interesting, also parallels with our world, politics.
But I find it weird that they brought that up and they make a huge deal about it, because you can basically ask every tech from that point on about it, and they all have something to say about it, but then they suddenly kind of drop it for the ending, that, there are these two sides, neither of which are this political party that seem to be a major focus of the game. So, what exactly happened there? How do they matter in all this?
Yeah,
that is a bit of a problem, I think. Overall, though, I had a lot of really serious central complaints about the game, but I find myself enjoying it quite a lot. I really did genuinely enjoy it. So
I will say I liked it. I I feel like it doesn't compare to Doki Doki, and I'm worried nothing will up to that game, but I don't know. I felt like this game, particularly after just playing the other text-based game with a much better twist, it feels a little underwhelming. It's not bad,
but this game didn't telegraph the twist.
Yeah, I think the writing in this game was much better. IMO. But maybe
certainly, and I'm not saying this is bad. In fact, I'm not even saying I didn't like it, just that for some reason it felt underwhelming.
It's interesting.
Huh. I can understand that. I think that it's not a game that will appeal to everyone, and some people will be left kind of wanting for more, I guess, but it is certainly a efficient story. It gets its point across without overstaying its welcome, and yeah.
Question: what dialogue option did you guys choose at the end? Did you side with management or did you side with red?
I pointed the gun at myself and shot myself the first time I played it through.
I pointed the gun at red and then shot myself.
I think we all shot the same person at the end of the game, but
You guys all
the
suck.
second
We all.
playthrough, I shot- at the end, at my second playthrough, because I did 2 full playthroughs, one with the commentary, but the second time I aimed it at red and shot red. So mostly because I wanted the achievement.
And Katie says purr.
Per.
This is going to translate on the audio version.
I can't even hear it. There you go.
Oh.
She's purring. She really wants onto my desk, and I don't want to let her up there.
I have to show you guys this before we turn off the stream, because this is what I've been glancing down at, because my cat just like knocked over my trash can here.
We're doing well. This is good. This is good radio, everybody. This is really good radio. But yeah, no, I very much enjoyed it, and it's actually quite interesting. Since we're kind of wrapping up here, they put out like a 1 month later, kind of like post-mortem post almost, which basically states like, "Yo, this game sold weirdly well." Like they were confused. Cat, don't go on my desk. Anyway, not right now, King. Maybe another day. So they talk about how it's like it sold way better than they were expecting. It had an overwhelmingly positive response on Steam, and they're basically saying like, "Yo, thanks for supporting this weird little experimental thing. We might do more stuff like that in the future." And I completely agree. Like, I would really like to see them do maybe not in the same genre, not maybe similar like text stuff, but not in the same like kind of tech noir type thing. Like, I would love to see more short stories like this from them, because this was really cool, and I would like to see, like, even as far as like dialogue tree systems go, like it had interesting puzzles, it was well designed, the writing was good, the world building was good. I'm glad that it sold well for what it is, and I'm glad that they made money on it, and I would like to play another game like this in the future from them. So yeah.
Yep.
Cool stuff.
Do you have any closing thoughts, guys?
Not much. I don't think. I think I already got finished off with those.
You good, Eggman?
I did write something down at the very end that I wanted to comment on briefly. With it's kind of ties into the cutscene. There was a lot of effects blur on the when you were in the train. Do you think, guys? I guess I believed that it wasn't really necessary. Like the models and art were very good. I don't know why they, like, a lot of bloom, a lot of like
motion
just like
blur,
blur near the edges and stuff like
Chromatic aberration.
Yeah, but the opening cutscene was very clean, and I kind of wish that they had kept that just in general throughout the whole thing.
I wonder if that's more of a stylistic thing.
It is kind of. It's not a big deal. It's just something that I thought of, and yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's fair.
I did take a few screenshots in the game of things I thought were weird. Like, there's one dialogue option where you literally say, "I'm more of an entertainment module alpha and chill sort of tech."
Yeah. That's all that was.
I didn't pick up on that. I saw it and I was like, "Oh, they just want to relax or whatever." It's a joke. I get it now.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of pretty good like sarcastic responses in this game, especially making fun of the listeners, which I mentioned earlier. But there's some other really good ones in there.
Yeah.
Oh, can I mention one tech that's it's a character. You end up having to reset him to get to his basic programming. The sponsorship tech.
Yeah.
So there's a tech who's an athlete, and you talk to him, and he's literally just a walking infomercial. So all he does is just goes on and on and on and on and on about high energy cells and how amazing it feels to have high energy cells, and how you really want to purchase this 10-pack of high energy cells.
You get a free energy cell holder.
Yeah, it's
free. Yeah, just got to pay shipping and handling.
It's fantastic, and it's just so funny because when you reset him and you're talking to him, he's like, "Oh yeah, like I was offered a really good deal. I got better treatment and better intelligence, but like the only conversation I could ever have with another tech is talking about these sponsorships." So It was just good. I really enjoyed that. It was just funny to me.
Yeah, it's kind of moments
me
like
smile.
those that made me really enjoy this game. Like there are a few points where I was just like, this is just hilarious.
Like this is a really well written little thriller, and I enjoyed it. It's the length of a movie. If you missed this whole show and you're just tuning in now, go purchase Subsurface Circular. It's like $6, and if you already played the game and you're listening, then perfect. If you didn't play the game and you're listening, well, I hope you enjoyed the show. I'm just gonna wrap us up real quick here. Let's start off with Lewis. Do you have anything you want to shout out or promote?
I can always shout out my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/LRFLEW, and it's what says below me down there. I haven't streamed much in the past month or so, but I should probably get back to that at some point. I've also done some stuff for OpenMC2. You can go check that out, github.com/LRFLEW/OpenMC2.
Yeah, I've been working on some features for OpenRTT2 because of recent developments. I'm not going to promise anything, but I've actually been streaming that, and you can find me at twitch.tv/Thyeggman. It's programming, so mostly just me typing in code, which I know is not the most exciting thing for everybody, but if you want to come and say hi, I would enjoy it.
And if you're watching live, this is my Twitch channel. I'm Greg. The internet calls me BlindiRL. I stream a lot of management and simulation games. Very exciting for Surviving Mars coming out soon. If you want to follow the show, you can follow us on Twitter at Real Story Mode, or you can find our Steam Curator, where we have listings for all of the games that we have covered before. There won't be any game in that curator ever that we have not talked about, so if you want to go find an easy place to purchase the games that we've played in the past, play through them, and then listen to the episodes respectively, I'd highly recommend doing that. With the exception for Empathy Path of Progress, just listen to the episode because that game is god-awful. And Path of Whispers, not Path of Progress. Why do I can't even remember the name of that game. Anyway.
Also, don't play Illville.
We didn't talk about that one, though. That's... Anyways. Listen to the last episode for that. Am I missing anything? Also SoundCloud. You can download the audio versions of these on SoundCloud, and the RSS feed is available in the command in my chat if you type in !podcast, so you can attach that to the podcast player of your choice. All podcast players support RSS feeds, so just do that because it's easier for us and I don't need to pay for other services aside from SoundCloud. Last thing is all of these VODs are updated or uploaded to my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/ggblind1, which is about to get demonetized, so which means I'll be swearing more because I don't have to care anymore. And yeah, I think that's it. Are we good? We're good? Cool.
Good.
Well, thank you very much for joining us live for this episode, episode 26 of the monthly Story Mode podcast. We'll figure out in after hours. We'll stay live for a bit for those of you watching live, but the podcast is going to end here. We're going to go figure out what game we're going to play next and babble a little bit in the talk shows directory. So thank you very much to everybody who tuned in. We will see you in 1 month's time with the next game that we play, and keep an eye on the official Twitter for announcements on what game we'll be covering next. Thank you very much for watching the Story Mode podcast. Thank you. Good night, good morning, good evening, goodbye. That's the wrong button. That's the right button.